All right, Steve. Whole world just found out. We found out. LeBron to the Miami Heat. Your thoughts?
Well, at first I wore my tie dye shirt today because I was thinking, what would the great one do? And it's kind of funny because I got tipped off about a half an hour before the announcement, 45 minutes before the announcement on the show that he was going to Miami. It was a done deal, and you can't argue with him giving up the money and taking the ridicule of leaving his hometown, the only place he's ever known his entire life, to go play with some guys that he's going to have to defer to and hope that they win a championship. They just became the Dallas Cowboys. They just became the New York Yankees. They just became the Chicago Cubs. They just became the Boston Red Sox of professional sports, especially in the NBA. They're going to be the most loved or the most despised team in the NBA when you bring that caliber of talent into one place. This is more so a significance than the big three in Boston because in a lot of ways, two of those three guys were past their prime. These guys are in their prime. These guys are under 28 years of age, multi-time All-Stars, and have accomplished quite a bit in their brief NBA careers. LeBron, people are ragging on LeBron for never winning anything. But where was Cleveland before LeBron James? He did take them to a finals. He did make them prohibitive favorites. They did end up having, the last two seasons, the best record in the NBA. Now, he didn't take them over the top, but the argument clearly is he didn't have enough help. And Dwayne Wade did have Shaq to win that championship in '06. So it's interesting from a lot of different perspectives. It'll be interesting now more so to see how they're going to put this team together. Are they going to respect Eric Spoelstra as a young, unproven coach? Or is Pat Riley going to do part two of coming out of the big perch and coming down to take over the franchise like he did in '06 if they start grumbling, if they're not going in the direction they're supposed to go to? And what are the expectations now? What do you expect with these three players depending on what they surround them with? Is that a 70-win team? Is there no question now they're the undisputed favorites going into the NBA season next year? We'll find out.
I know LeBron said that it's about winning a championship for him, and that's why he chose Miami. Do you think it's about championships for him, or do you think it's about the money, his endorsements, and overall his public perception of how people look at him?
He's going to take a hit from a public relations standpoint. He's going to take a hit from a financial standpoint in terms of the NBA contract because he's not taking the max deal by going to Miami. It'll be real interesting to see how this contract is structured. Will he have an out clause after, say, 3 years if it's not working, or maybe he can go back home to Cleveland? Or if it does work where he wins multiple championships, he can go back home to Cleveland and try to help them to get back to where they were in terms of what he accomplished before he decided tonight what direction he was going to go in. The bottom line is this. You can't argue with the fact that he's sacrificing, as does Dwayne Wade, as is Chris Bosh, certain aspects from a financial standpoint and clearly aspects from being the quote-unquote man of the team. I mean, you're going to have that three-headed monster now in Miami versus this is Dwayne Wade and the Miami Heat, or this is LeBron James and the Miami Heat, or this is Chris Bosh and the Miami Heat. So he's sacrificed, and I don't think he's worried about his public relations. I don't think he's worried about his finances, because if he was, he would have stayed in Cleveland, Ohio. And if he was worried necessarily about maximizing his revenues, he would have went to New York City or went to New Jersey. So I don't think that's an issue.
As far as like it affecting the Bucks, how do you think it affects the Bucks and the Bucks looking towards possibly Eastern Conference Final or a championship game? But their additions of Drew Gooden, Chris Douglas Roberts, draft picks, and just all the people who re-signed John Solomons. How does this affect them in the long run, you think?
On paper, the Bucks became a better team in general by moving Dan Gazarich and my good friend Charlie Bell and getting guys like, Corey Maggette and Drew Gooden, and depending on what the draft picks do, and a year better with Brandon Jennings and hopefully a healthy Andrew Bogut. The Bucks, I think, automatically with the Chicago Bulls become the favorites to win the division. With Cleveland losing LeBron James, Cleveland's clearly going to come down a little bit, and then the rest of the division is still in rebuild mode with Detroit and Indianapolis. So Chicago and Milwaukee clearly become the prohibitive favorites to win the division. Now, clearly, LeBron James joining forces with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade in Miami make them a prohibitive favorite to win a championship. You still got the Boston Celtics. You still got the Orlando Magic. You still got the Atlanta Hawks. And these are teams that are going to factor into what's going to happen in the Eastern Conference. Now, the Bucks get into the mix, at least from the perspective of being probably a playoff team, but it was a wait-and-see thing to what they'll be able to accomplish in the postseason against these other power pack teams. So it helps them in the short term when you do the regular season. The Bucks, if everything works out on paper from a team standpoint under Scott Skiles, they should be a factor in the division. And even if they lose the division, they should be right there near the top. But then once we get to the playoffs and you start getting to the next level of talented teams, like now the revamped Miami Heat, it will be interesting to see what they accomplish.
And lastly, everybody's expecting it now. Do you think the Miami Heat will win a championship, and will it be it next season?
I don't think they win the championship next season. I think the Lakers are still the prohibitive favorite to win the championship because it's not just about these three guys, although you have a great talent base there. It's going to be about the supporting cast. It's going to be about who's going to be the backup point guard. It's going to be about who's going to be the center and the backup center. And you have to develop a chemistry between these guys, and that doesn't come overnight. It didn't come overnight for the Boston Celtics, but once they got it together at the end of that season and the supporting cast stepped up, they won that championship. But they were more of a veteran team. These guys are relatively young, and these guys have been the figureheads of their franchises since the time they came out of college. So it's going to be interesting to see how they defer, who's going to defer, and how much time it's going to take. It can happen short and it can happen long, but I think it's going to take more time than people think. And I think they have the potential of winning a championship, but I don't think it's a done deal because they got LeBron James. So this is interesting just watching this whole process, but it's going to be far more interesting to watch how these teams, especially the Miami Heat, put together the rest of this franchise and what they do going into next season.